I am Kara Winslow, a 30 years old. I'm a junior financial analyst in Portland, Oregon, or I was, before I found out my sister drained every penny of the trust fund our parents left me. What happened when I confronted her changed everything. The last time I felt truly safe about money, I was standing in a dusty lawyer's office, 17 years old, nodding along as Dad's estate planner explained how the Winslow family trust would protect me. College, housing, a cushion to build a life. Mom and Dad were gone, but they'd planned for everything. Or so I thought. 12 years later, I'm sitting at my tiny IKEA desk in my cramped apartment, a half-eaten salad wilting next to my keyboard. My phone buzzes, a push notification from my bank app. I glance at it absently, thinking it's my rent draft, the same boring withdrawal that hits every month. But the number doesn't make sense. I squint at the screen. My stomach does a slow, queasy roll when I see the balance, $3.14. For a second I think it's a glitch, a typo. Maybe they forgot a couple zeros. I refresh the app. The number stays put, $3.14, not even enough for the cheap coffee I buy every morning on my way to the office. I lean back in my chair, heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I scroll back through the transaction history, my finger trembling. That's when I see them, the wires, the big ones, 10,000 here, 40,000 there. A steady drip of withdrawals, all in neat, round numbers, not automatic payments, not taxes, transfers, outbound to an account I don't recognize. My chest tightens. I open my laptop and pull up the trust login, the same portal I barely check anymore because in my mind it's always been safe, sacred, untouchable. Except now it's empty. There's a final line item, bold black text that swims in my vision. Transfer authorized, AMANDAWINSLOW. Amanda. I sit frozen. A memory flashes in, Amanda in our parents' old kitchen, 24 years old, explaining how she'd take care of the paperwork for my tuition that year because I'd messed up the FAFSA. Her nails tapping the granite counter while she waved off my questions. Trust me, Kara, this is what big sisters are for. I slam the laptop shut so hard my fork clatters to the floor. The room feels too small, too bright. The apartment hums around me, the fridge buzzing, a neighbor's TV leaking through the walls, but all I hear is blood rushing in my ears. I grab my phone and call her. It rings and rings and rings. Straight to voicemail. Of course. Amanda lives in a high-rise downtown, all glass panels and curated succulents. The kind of place that looks like it was designed for magazine shoots. She's Portland, clean beauty darling, a founder who built Winslow Glow from a single viral Instagram post into a brand every mid-level influencer wants in their bathroom shelfie. I'm at her door less than an hour later. No plan, no words rehearsed. I stand there in the hallway, sweating through my cheap blazer, fist poised to knock. For a moment, I feel 12 years old again, the quiet one waiting for my big sister to tell me what comes next. Then I think about that number, $3.14. I pound on the door so hard my knuckles sting. It swings open. Amanda appears, perfectly curated in yoga leggings and a silk wrap top, hair twisted into a loose bun that looks casual but probably took half an hour. Her expression flickers from surprise to something else. A shadow of annoyance that she smooths over with a bright smile. Kara, wow, you should have texted. I was just about to head to bar. Where's my money? I blurt. The words come out cracked and too loud, echoing off the polished hallway walls. Her smile twitches. For a heartbeat, she looks almost amused. What are you talking about? I push past her before I lose my nerve. Her condo smells like fresh lilies and citrus candles. Fake clean, the way everything about her is fake clean. I stand in the middle of her pristine white living room, surrounded by plush throws and minimalist furniture, my phone clenched in my palm like a weapon. You stole my trust fund, Amanda. You transferred it all out. Where is it? She closes the door gently, like she's dealing with a feral cat. Okay, slow down. What trust fund? I hold the phone up, screen glowing with my near zero balance. This trust fund, the one Mom and Dad left me, it's gone. Her eyes flick to the phone, then to me. Her smile is gone now, replaced by a careful blankness. She crosses her arms over her chest. Kara, I did steal anything. I borrowed it for the company. My breath catches in my throat. You borrowed $390,000 without telling me. She sighs the way she always does when I'm being difficult. She moves to the kitchen island, her bare feet silent on the polished concrete floor. She picks up a glass and fills it at her filtered faucet like we're discussing the weather. It's not like that, she says, voice sweet calm. You weren't using it. It was just sitting there. I needed to cover a few gaps, launch costs, influencers, packaging redesign. Kara, you know how tight startups are. You'll get it back. It's an investment in both of us. My vision blurs at the edges. You forged my name. She lifts a shoulder. It was just paperwork. A formality. Come on, look around you. Winslow Glow is thriving. Once the next funding round closes, I'll repay you and you'll get equity. You're overreacting. Overreacting. The word rings in my ears like a slap. I take a step closer, so close I can see the flecks of highlighter dusting her cheekbones. You didn't even ask, you just took it. She rolls her eyes, actually rolls them. God, Kara, don't be dramatic. You never needed that money. What were you going to do with it? Buy a house in the suburbs? You hate debt, you hate risk. You'd let it rot in some low-interest account forever. I put it to work. Something breaks in my chest, something brittle that's held me quiet for years. I see the fake warmth in her eyes, the calculation lurking behind it. The same Amanda who charmed our parents' friends, charmed her early investors, charmed every beauty editor who ever called her a self-made innovator. She didn't build this brand. She bought it with my future. I swallow the sour taste in my mouth. Pay me back all of it now. Amanda laughs, not the forced Instagram giggle but a sharp bark that bounces off the marble backsplash. It doesn't work like that, Kara. It's tied up in product runs, marketing campaigns. You'll get it back when I get it back. I step closer still. Then sell your condo, sell your car, sell your bags. Her eyes narrow. Don't be pathetic. That word slices deeper than I expect. I feel my fists clench at my sides. For a heartbeat, I see the world Amanda wants, me walking away, tail tucked, maybe grateful for a handful of stock options she'll never make liquid. Quiet Kara, small Kara, the sister who never makes trouble. But I'm not her anymore. I draw myself up, chin high, voice shaking but loud enough to echo across her spotless counters. I'm not leaving without it. I'm not your ATM. You're going to fix this. Amanda tosses back her hair, glass still perched in her manicured hand. She looks at me like she's looking at lint on her coat. If you want it back, Kara, maybe get a real job, or find someone else to marry you some security. I can't baby you forever. The words hit me like a slap, but they also light something up, something cold and bright and unstoppable. I take one last look around at the empire she built on my stolen inheritance, the tastefully framed press features, the stacked PR boxes waiting by the door, the neon pink Winslow Glow sign on her living room wall. And I know, in my bones, that she just handed me the fuel I need to burn this to the ground. I don't scream, I don't cry, I don't beg. I walk past her, back out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me. Outside, the city hums under streetlights. My phone buzzes with her fake apology texts before I've even reached the elevator. I delete them without reading a word. She thinks I'll back down, she thinks I'll stay small. But Amanda's about to learn something she's never understood. The quiet ones remember everything. I don't remember the elevator ride down from Amanda's condo. I don't remember walking to the parking garage or the cold slap of rain when I stepped outside. All I remember is gripping the wheel of my old Honda Civic so tight my knuckles burned white under the streetlights. I drove aimlessly for an hour, through downtown where her face was plastered on a massive digital billboard for Winslow Glow's new launch, through the dark side streets where food trucks rattled and flickered under strings of fairy lights, past the old neighborhood where our parents raised us in a split-level ranch with green shutters and a yard Dad used to mow every Sunday like clockwork. The rain blurred the windshield, my breath fogged the glass, my mind kept replaying her voice, don't be pathetic, I can't baby you forever, you never needed that money. I don't remember pulling into my apartment's lot. I sat there a long time with the engine ticking and my phone dark in the cup holder. For a second I thought about calling Mom before remembering there was no mom to call anymore. Just me, always me. And Amanda, my sister who could spin lies into gold and empty my future like it was her personal purse. I trudged upstairs, shoes squelching rainwater onto the stairs. Inside, I stripped off my soaked clothes, wrapped myself in the blanket Dad left me, a scratchy old plaid thing I've hauled to every apartment since college. I lay on the couch, heart drumming so loud it felt like the walls should shake with it. Sleep never came. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick. I'd never missed a day at my junior analyst job. Even when I had the flu 2 winters ago, I dragged myself in, pale and coughing, clutching a bottle of orange juice like it was holy water. But that morning, staring at my blotchy reflection in the bathroom mirror, I knew I couldn't sit under the fluorescent lights pretending to care about quarterly expense reports while my entire future was gone. My manager's voice on the other end was clipped, polite, but I heard the silent judgment, Kara, the reliable one, flacking out. I hung up before she could ask if I'd be back tomorrow. I opened my laptop and stared at the login for the trust fund again, the zero balance glaring back at me like an accusation. I searched every folder, every email. Maybe I'd missed something, a clause, an error, anything. But the numbers didn't lie. Amanda hadn't just borrowed a little. She siphoned it for months, slow enough I never noticed the drips until the well ran dry. Next, I Googled how to report trust fund fraud. Lawyer ads popped up. So many smiling faces promising help for the low cost of a free consultation. My stomach turned. Legal fees, court costs. I couldn't afford my rent this month. How was I supposed to afford a lawyer to sue my sister? I buried my face in my hands. The cold pit of helplessness opened wide in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer when I saw Derek's name. Derek was Amanda's fiancé. Sort of. They'd been engaged for 2 years, no date set, just the same ring Amanda flaunted in carefully angled selfies when the timing suited her narrative. I never really knew him, not well. He was handsome in that safe way, warm eyes, nice hair, a bankable accessory for a brand built on aspirational beauty. I always figured he was in on it, the show, the image. When I picked up, his voice was low, cautious. Kara, hey, can we talk? My throat tightened. What do you want, Derek? He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath forever. I heard about the trust fund. I swear I didn't know, not all of it. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Right. Kara, please, Amanda's been spiraling for months. I thought she told me you agreed, that it was a family loan. She lied to me too. I stayed silent. Outside, rain drummed against my window like restless fingers. Derek's voice dropped. I'm not trying to excuse her. I think you should know, she's in deep. There's more than just your trust fund. The company's bleeding money. She's been floating invoices, bouncing influencer payouts, faking supply orders to keep the next round of investors sweet. My head spun. How do you know this? He hesitated. Because I found the invoices. I handle some of the smaller contracts. It's worse than she lets on. I closed my eyes. My whole life Amanda spun stories. I believed her every time. Maybe Derek did too. Maybe we were just two props in the Amanda show, too blind to see the script she wrote for us. What do you want, Derek? I asked again, softer this time. He didn't answer for a moment. When he did, his voice cracked. I want out, but I'm stuck, Kara. She'll ruin me if I talk, sue me for breach, defame me. I have nothing on my own, but I can't watch her do this to you or to everyone else. I sank back into my couch cushions. Why tell me now? He paused, then he said, because you're the only one who will do something about it. I met Derek that night at a sad little diner off Powell Boulevard, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of burnt coffee ground into the walls. He sat across from me, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him, dark circles under his eyes, collar of his expensive coat rumpled like he'd slept in his car. He slid a manila folder across the sticky formica table. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were copies of invoices, real ones, fake ones, duplicate payments, emails Amanda sent under my name. My signature forged in a looping flourish I'd never written myself. Derek watched my face, his hands wrapped tight around a chipped mug of decaf. I'm sorry, he said, and for once I believed he meant it. I flipped through page after page. There was no denying it anymore. Amanda hadn't just stolen my trust fund. She made me complicit on paper. If it all fell apart, she could blame me for the forgeries, the mismanaged funds, the sudden vanishing of investor dollars. I was her built-in scapegoat. I looked up at Derek. His eyes were wide, raw, like he was begging me to save him too. What do? I whispered. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. Peter Bowman, Lab Director, Cascade Dermaceuticals. The name sounded familiar. Amanda mentioned him once, the genius behind Winslow Glow's secret formulas. I'd never met him. Peter knows the real numbers, Derek said. He's not loyal to Amanda, he's loyal to keeping the lab alive. If you want to fight her, start there. I stared at the business card until the letters blurred. Amanda didn't know I had this. She didn't know Derek was with me now, in the shadows at least. For the first time since I saw that $3.14 in my account, I felt a spark of something unfamiliar. Not hope exactly, not yet. But possibility. When I got home that night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, lights off, phone face down. I spread Derek's folder across the cheap plywood surface, lines of fraud and arrogance and betrayal all traced back to the same perfect smile. Then I opened a new spreadsheet. I made a list, every investor Amanda leaned on, every supplier, every contact she used to get my trust fund under her thumb. I added Derek's notes, the lab's name, the dates the fake invoices hit my trust. Then I wrote one more line at the top in all caps, do not back down. I sat there until dawn painted a pale stripe through my blinds. Exhausted but wired, my heart drumming the beat of a promise I hadn't spoken aloud yet. Amanda thought I'd stay quiet. Amanda thought I'd be too small, too soft, too loyal to fight back. She didn't understand. She didn't just steal my money, she stole my silence. And once that was gone, the rest of her empire had nowhere to hide. Sleep was still impossible, but I wasn't tired. Not in the way Amanda hoped I'd be, worn down, exhausted enough to cave, to forgive her just to make it all stop. If anything, the weight of what Derek gave me kept me upright, kept me hungry. By sunrise, my apartment was a maze of sticky notes and legal pads. Names, numbers, arrows drawn in thick red pen from one piece of paper to the next. My kitchen counter overflowed with cold coffee mugs and half-eaten crackers. I barely noticed. All I saw was the pattern, Amanda's pretty empire stitched together with lies, and if I pulled one thread hard enough, the whole thing would unravel. I showered in a daze, got dressed in my usual neutral work slacks and a plain sweater. For the first time in days, I didn't feel small in them. I felt camouflaged. Nobody notices the quiet girl in the cheap slacks. Nobody expects her to sharpen a knife behind her back. My first stop was Cascade Dermaceuticals, the lab. Derek said Peter Bowman held the real key, and Derek wasn't the type to waste time on guesswork. I found the address buried on their ancient website, an industrial block outside the city, hidden behind rows of chain-link fencing and half-dead trees left over from the old lumber yards. I drove there on autopilot. My Civic rattled over potholes, the heater wheezing against the chill that still clung to the dawn. I parked by a loading dock where a single truck idled, driver leaning against the hood with a cup of gas station coffee. Inside, the lobby was as sterile as any lab, all white walls, scuffed tile floors, the faint chemical tang of antiseptic drifting through the air. A tired receptionist in a pilled sweater looked up from her crossword when I stepped in. "Can I help you?" she asked. I cleared my throat, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm here for Peter Bowman, he'll want to see me." She raised an eyebrow, but before she could say no, a voice called from down the hall. "Kara." I turned. A man in a rumpled lab coat was standing in the doorway. Mid-40s, sandy hair peppered with gray, glasses perched on his head like he'd forgotten they were there. He didn't look like a secret-keeping mastermind. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in 3 days. I stepped forward. "Peter." He gave me a once-over, my creased slacks, the folder clutched in my arms like a shield. Then he nodded. "Come on back." Peter's office was exactly what I expected. Piles of lab reports, a battered mug that said "World's Okayest Chemist," and a window half-fogged from the cheap heater rattling under it. He gestured for me to sit, then dropped into the chair behind his cluttered desk. He looked exhausted but curious, like a man forced to watch a slow train wreck who'd finally found someone holding the brakes. "I figured you show up eventually," he said, voice rough but not unkind. My hands trembled as I spread Derek's folder on the desk between us. "You know what she did." Peter didn't even glance at the papers. He leaned back, folding his arms. "I know more than you think. Amanda owes this lab 6 figures in unpaid invoices. Promised the world, never delivered. Every new launch she parades on Instagram, that's us, busting our backs in here to make it look legit, while she skimmed off your money to cover the parts she didn't want to pay for. A sick laugh bubbled in my throat. She stole my trust fund, said she borrowed it like she borrowed your formulas. Peter's eyes softened, but the kindness there was tired. Your sister is good at illusions. Pretty packaging, fancy marketing, but underneath, smoke and mirrors. We've been carrying her for months, hoping she'd close that big investor round, but she won't, not now. My pulse raised. I want to end it. I want to make sure she can't do this to anyone else, but I can't. I don't know where to start. Peter studied me, really studied me, like he was deciding if I was worth gambling his secrets on. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a battered file folder thicker than Derek. He flipped it open, pages of invoices, lab test reports, non-disclosure agreements scribbled with Amanda's neat, perfect signature. I've got proof she violated contract terms, Peter said. Product claims that aren't real, ingredients she swapped for cheaper knockoffs. If the wrong blogger ever tests those jars, she's dead in the water. A shiver of vindication crawled down my spine. Why haven't you leaked this? He snorted. Because I'm a scientist, not a scandal monger, and because if she goes under, I lose too. We're a small lab, Kara. We don't survive when a flagship client tanks overnight. I looked at the folders between us, his papers, my forgeries, 2 halves of the same puzzle. Amanda had always been so careful about keeping her masks separate, the darling founder, the clean beauty queen, the generous sister. But in this cramped office, it all lay tangled together in ink and unpaid invoices. I met Peter's eyes. Help me, we can keep the lab alive if we cut her out. Peter leaned back, lips twisting into a tired smile. And you think you can run this show better than Amanda? I forced myself to sit taller, even though my knees wanted to fold. No, but I can run it honestly. I can pay you what you're owed. I'll find the money if I have to break it out of her diamond-encrusted clutch myself. Peter barked a laugh, then he sobered, leaning forward, elbows on the desk. She'll bury you if you go public, you know that, right? She'll spin it like you're bitter, unstable. She'll paint herself the victim, she's good at that. I didn't flinch. Then we don't go public, not yet, we take it from the inside, quiet, controlled. Peter watched me for a long moment, then slid the folder closer. You're your parents' kid, huh? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yeah, I guess I am. When I left Cascade Dermaceuticals that day, the sky was clear for the first time in days. Cold winter sun glinted off the lab's glass doors as I stepped into the parking lot. The folder under my arm felt like armor or maybe ammunition. I still didn't know exactly how I'd use it. I just knew I wouldn't let it gather dust like my trust fund did. As I buckled myself into the Civic, my phone buzzed. Derek again. How did it go? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I typed, she won't see it coming. He replied immediately, good, she shouldn't. I leaned my head back against the seat, let out a shaky breath. Amanda always thought she was the storm, untouchable. I was the quiet one who'd never fight back. She forgot, even a quiet storm leaves nothing standing when it finally breaks. I wish I could say that after I left Peter's lab, everything got easier. That having proof made me stronger overnight. That Derek's messages stopped sounding half frantic, half apologetic. That the plan unfurled like a neat map I could follow step by step. But the truth was, the plan was just me, and Derek, and Peter's folder. A rickety alliance stitched together by betrayal and fear. And if any one of us got cold feet, Amanda would smell it before we ever got close enough to touch her throne. The next piece was Clara. Clara Jenkins had been Amanda's best friend in college, or at least that's what Amanda always called her when the cameras were rolling. My ride or die, Amanda squealed on live streams, pulling Clara into frame. Clara always laughed but never quite smiled with her teeth. Behind the scenes, Clara was the glue that held Winslow Glow's illusion together. PR releases, influencer deals, shady partnerships buried in contracts so complicated you'd need a law degree to find the loopholes. Clara found them, wrote them, pitched them. Amanda fronted the sparkle. Clara buried the bodies. I hadn't spoken to Clara in years. She'd been at our parents' funeral, standing stiffly behind Amanda in a tailored black dress while Amanda sobbed so prettily for every news camera that showed up. I remember hugging Clara once in the church vestibule. She smelled like stale coffee and panic. I found Clara where Derek said she'd be, a co-working loft downtown, one floor above a vegan cafe that smelled like burnt matcha and self-importance. I took the stairs because the elevator reeked of weed and regret. Inside, the loft buzzed with the soft hum of overworked freelancers, the glow of laptop screens, the occasional hiss of an espresso machine. Clara sat at a corner table, half hidden behind a stack of binders and a laptop smudged with fingerprints. She didn't see me at first. When I said her name, she jumped like I'd slapped the back of her neck. Kara, her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't used it for real conversation in days. She looked smaller than I remembered, hair scraped into a careless bun, makeup half worn off. The only thing polished was the tablet she flipped shut with a sharp click. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. She shrugged, pushing a pile of folders aside. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. I took it as permission. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Clara tapped her pen on a legal pad covered in loops of tiny writing. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the table. "You know why I'm here," I said. A bitter laugh escaped her. "I should. Derek's been blowing up my phone for 2 days. I ignored him. He's spineless." I forced myself not to defend Derek. He was spineless until he was. "I have Peter's reports," I said. "I have the forged invoices she made in my name, and I have you." Clara's pen froze. She lifted her gaze, eyes pinning me to the seat like a pinned moth. "Me. You're the one who knows the contracts, the influencer deals, you know where the money should be, you know who Amanda's paying off and who she's stiffing." A tiny muscle jumped in Clara's jaw. She picked up her coffee, cold by now, and sipped it anyway. "You want me to snitch?" "I want you to save yourself," I shot back, sharper than I meant. "Amanda's going down. You can go with her, or you can help me make sure she doesn't drag you under when she drowns." Clara snorted. "You talk tough for the quiet sister." I met her stare without blinking. "I'm not quiet anymore." A silence stretched between us, filled only by the soft clatter of keyboards, the hiss of milk steaming behind the bar. Outside the loft's huge window, the city moved on without us, delivery trucks groaning, pedestrians bent against the cold wind. I wondered if Amanda was out there right now, curled up in a salon chair somewhere, plotting her next photo shoot while her empire cracked under her perfect shellac. When Clara spoke again, her voice was so low I had to lean in. "I didn't sign up for this, you know. I was 23 when Amanda called me. I thought I'd made it, PR director, co-founder, whatever title looked best on press releases. I made her look legitimate. That was my job." Her fingers drummed the cold cup. Then the late payments started, the hush clauses, the fake reviews, the buyouts. She told me it was strategic obfuscation. The new investors loved the spin, and when I wanted out, she reminded me my name on half the shady contracts too. I let her words hang between us. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, but she was laying down her weapons. I saw the same cornered animal look in her eyes that I'd seen in my mirror after Amanda slammed that door in my face. "Help me," I said, voice steady. "I'm not going to the press. I'm not blowing this up on TikTok for clicks. I want her to pay, quietly, legally, properly, you know how." Clara barked a soft, broken laugh. "And what do you want in the end? You want to kill the brand." I shook my head. "I want to fix it, make it honest, pay back everyone she owes. If that means burning Winslow Glow to the ground and starting from the ashes, fine, but this time it'll be mine." Clara leaned back, studying me like she was seeing someone entirely new. Slowly, she reached for her bag and pulled out a battered blue notebook, elastic band barely holding the pages inside. She slid it across the table. "Everything she didn't want on the servers, it's in there. Names, shell companies, hidden accounts. She used you to open half of them." My heart hammered. I flipped the notebook open, rows of scribbled numbers, account names that matched the withdrawals I'd seen draining my trust. Clara's handwriting was tiny, neat, meticulous, a paper trail of a betrayal years in the making. I looked up at her, this ghost of my sister's past, and found something fierce behind her exhaustion. "You leak this," she said, "she'll come for us both." I met her tired smile with one of my own, then let her come. We left the co-working loft together. Clara didn't say goodbye. She just slipped into a rideshare without looking back, her bag hugged tight to her chest like a lifeboat. I watched her car disappear down the street, the city swallowing her up in its constant, indifferent pulse. When I got back to my Civic, my hands trembled so hard I had to sit for a while with my forehead pressed to the cold steering wheel. This was real now. Not just an idea scribbled on sticky notes at midnight, not just Derek's whispered regrets or Peter's weary folder. This was the kind of truth that could shatter Amanda's glass tower in a single push. And it was mine. That night I gathered them all, Derek, Peter, and Clara, in the back room of a cheap Thai restaurant near my apartment. I'd reserved the corner table myself, told the owner we needed privacy while she raised an eyebrow at our mismatched crew. Derek in his crisp pea coat, Clara in a thrifted trench, Peter in his lab coat still dusted with powder. And me, the little sister with her world in her hands. I spread the files on the sticky table, the blue notebook open to Clara's meticulous scrawl. Derek ordered a round of spring rolls no one touched. I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. "This is it," I said. My voice didn't shake, not this time. "Amanda built her castle on my money, on your work, on your silence. If we don't take it back now, we never will." Peter cracked a tired grin. "And if she fights back?" "She will," Clara muttered. Derek looked at me, really looked like he was seeing me for the first time. "And if she does?" I held his gaze, "then we bury her in the truth." Outside the window, rain pounded the cracked pavement, neon signs flickering in the wet dark. Inside, our little war council sat hunched over scribbled notes in cold curry, 4 people who'd finally decided we'd rather drown than let Amanda hold our heads under one more time. For the first time I felt it fully, the shift. The storm in my chest wasn't fear anymore. It was purpose. We left the restaurant just before midnight. The city was slick with rain, the streetlights bending in the puddles like melted gold. Clara hugged her coat tighter as she slipped into Derek's car. Peter shuffled off to his battered Prius, mumbling about early lab shifts and legal minefields. I stood on the sidewalk alone for a while, watching taillights disappear, my breath fogging in the cold. I should have felt relief, an army, finally, but all I felt was the ache of what came next. Amanda wasn't going to fold because her little sister suddenly found a spine. She'd come at me sideways, all smiles and lawyers, maybe an Instagram post dripping in faux sisterly concern. She'd bury me in legal threats until I couldn't afford to lift my head. I knew it, and so did they. I climbed into my Civic, the interior still reeking of stale fries and damp wool. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a new text, late at night. "Amanda, we need to talk. Please come over tomorrow, noon." No apology, just that forced softness she wore like perfume when she wanted something. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until the text burned into my vision like an afterimage. The next morning, I dressed like armor, dark jeans, my plain black sweater, the same battered boots I'd worn when Dad took me camping that last summer. I didn't wear makeup. Amanda hated when I showed up underdone. She said it made her look bad by comparison. I wanted her to feel that shame. I wanted her to choke on it. I pulled my hair back tight, grabbed Clara's notebook and Peter's files, slipped them into my thrifted satchel. Then I locked my apartment door like I wouldn't be coming back. A small voice in my head whispered, "Maybe you won't." Her condo lobby smelled like expensive lilies, the same artificial floral haze that clung to her clothes. The concierge recognized me, the nice sister who always smiled, always let Amanda speak for us both. He waved me through with a polite nod. I took the elevator alone, watched the floors tick upward, my own face staring back at me in the mirrored doors, pale, hollow-eyed, but steady. The doors opened onto her floor with a soft chime that felt mocking. Amanda answered before I knocked. She'd been waiting. I could tell by how her phone was clutched in her palm like a lifeline, the perfect drape of her blouse just slightly rumpled. The mask was on, but crooked. "Kara," she said, voice warm, "come in." Her living room was staged, candles lit, a tray of green tea and tiny cookies like she'd invited me for a holiday catch-up. For a second I almost laughed. Amanda never baked. She didn't even keep sugar in her condo. Everything sweet about her was synthetic. I sat on the edge of her pristine white couch. She perched across from me, folding one leg under herself in that casual influencer pose she used for interviews, just relaxed enough to look natural, just posed enough to look flawless. "I'm glad you came," she began. "I hate that it's gotten so Stop, my voice was so sharp it startled even me. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, the notebook, set them on the coffee table between us like a bomb. Her eyes flicked to them, just for a second, but it was there, the twitch of her perfect mouth. You think you're going to scare me with that? She said, all silk and teeth. You think you know what you're doing, Kara. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I wanted her to see I wasn't shrinking this time. You used me, you forged my name, you drained everything Mom and Dad left me to bankroll your fantasy. Her laugh was soft, dismissive. You never did understand how these things work. Money has to move, Kara, it can't just sit there. It wasn't yours to move. My voice cracked on the last word, but I didn't care. Her fake calm flinched. Good. Amanda leaned back, crossing her arms. So what's your plan? You're going to run to the cops, to the press? You think you'll come out looking clean when I show them how you signed off on everything? You think anyone going to believe sweet, naive Kara didn't know where her money was going? I could see her calculation, the old trick she'd used since we were kids. Twist the story just enough so the truth got buried under doubt. She was good at it, but not good enough. I'm not going to the press, I said, not yet. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. She hated when her script went off book. I'm taking your company, I said, my voice steady now, almost gentle. I'm buying your suppliers out from under you. I'm locking your accounts. Clara's done cleaning up your messes. Peter's done formulating for you. Derek's done pretending you're a genius. Amanda went perfectly still, a statue carved out of porcelain and poison. You're bluffing, she whispered. I pushed the notebook toward her. The pages fluttered open, all those hidden accounts, the shell companies, the ghost payments, her secrets spelled out in Clara's tidy ink. You want to sue me? I said. Do it. I'll countersue with fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Let's see how your investors feel when they find out you swapped organic actives for cheap fillers, when they learn your clean beauty label is a lie. I leaned back, folded my hands in my lap like Dad did when he used to lecture us at the dinner table. You stole from me, I'm stealing you back. Amanda's face was blank, too blank, but her hand trembled when she reached for her phone. I knew she wanted to text someone, probably her lawyer, maybe her PR fixer, maybe Derek. Didn't matter, they weren't hers anymore. For a long time, she said nothing, just stared at the notebook, her empire laid bare in ugly blue ink. I could almost see her mind trying to patch the cracks, spin a new story, but every angle she tried slammed into the same truth. No one was left to lie for her. When she finally spoke, her voice was a brittle whisper. You don't have the stomach for this, Kara. She meant it as an insult, but all I felt was relief because if Amanda still believed I was soft, I'd already won. I stood up, smoothed my sweater, slipped Clara's notebook back into my bag. Watch me, I said. And I left her there, frozen in her designer living room, candles flickering, the smell of burnt sugar curling in the air like the ghost of her illusions. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city smelled like wet pavement and something sharp, ozone maybe, the kind of smell that comes after a storm when the air is clean but dangerous, like anything could happen. I pulled my phone from my pocket and typed a single text to Clara, it's done. A second later, her reply, she'll come for you. I smiled, small but real, let her try. Because Amanda always thought I was the weak one, the quiet one, the one who'd stand by while she climbed over my shoulders to her perfect throne. But she forgot that even the quiet ones have claws, and when we finally show them, there's no going back. By the time I stepped back into my apartment, the adrenaline had begun to rot in my bloodstream. It turned into something sharp and sour that coiled in my gut, making my hands shake when I tried to pour water from the tap. The kitchen faucet dripped in the silence, steady, mocking. For a second I thought about calling Derek or Clara or even Peter, but there was nothing left to say. Amanda knew, she'd seen my cards on her coffee table, and now the waiting began. I sat on the couch in the same spot where I'd wrapped myself in Dad's plaid blanket weeks ago, when the trust fund balance first screamed zero at me. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The one who'd let Amanda's voice trick her into believing silence was safety. The rain had stopped outside, but I could still hear the gutters overflowing, a cold hush that filled the apartment's emptiness. I didn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch. Every buzz of my phone turned my stomach, but nothing came. No lawyer's email, no public statement, no tearful sisterly voice note explaining it all away. She was planning something. I could feel her moving behind her locked doors and fake smiles, pulling new strings, testing which ones would hold. By dawn, I'd stopped shaking. I brewed bitter coffee and sat at my tiny kitchen table, phone pressed between my palms like a talisman. I scrolled through Amanda's Instagram feed, all polished marble counters, flawless skin, soft captions about radical self-love, typed by Clara back when Clara still believed in the brand. Under her latest post, a photo of her at a launch party, fake laughing next to an actress whose name I couldn't even remember. The comments were the usual flood of heart emojis and worship. But buried deep, 3 or 4 people were asking about the delayed orders, the unreturned DMs, the influencer collabs that had gone mysteriously silent. A small crack, I leaned closer, like I could reach through the screen and pry it wider. I met Clara at a grimy coffee shop near the train station, the kind of place that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in a decade but did strong drip coffee for $1. She was already there when I walked in, hoodie pulled tight around her face, laptop open next to an empty pastry bag. I dropped into the seat across from her. She didn't say hi, just pushed her phone across the sticky table. On the screen, an email draft. To investors at winslowglow.com. Subject: urgent, product safety concerns and financial irregularities. Clara's hands were tucked in her sleeves as she spoke. This hits them where it hurts: the board, the early investors, the ones she can't spin with a selfie. I read it once, twice. It wasn't a press scandal. It was a surgical strike, screenshots of lab reports, supply invoices, Derek's internal memos, Peter's files, my forged signatures, and at the end, Clara's name plain and unapologetic. "She'll say you're lying," I murmured. Clara's mouth twisted into a humorless smile. "She's been saying that for years, but now she'll have to say it in court." A beat passed, just the low hiss of the milk frother behind the counter, a man cursing softly at the barista over the price of oat milk. The city waking up all around us while my life twisted into something sharp and new. "Once you hit send," I said quietly, "there's no going back." Clara shrugged. "Back doesn't exist anymore, Cara." I closed my eyes. Thought of Dad's hands on the steering wheel during long road trips, the warm smell of Mom's hair when she hugged me goodbye for college, the way Amanda used to braid my hair when we were kids, gentle, careful, the tug of her fingers so different from the way she'd pull my strings later. I opened my eyes, met Clara's tired stare. "Do it." She hit send. We didn't linger. She closed her laptop with a snap, shoved it into her battered tote. We didn't hug. There was nothing soft left between us, only the brittle, necessary bond of people who'd stood at the edge of a fire and decided to push each other through instead of turning back. The first ripple came within the hour. I was halfway home when my phone lit up. Derek, calling this time instead of texting. I answered on the third ring. "It's out," he said without greeting. His voice was breathless, like he'd run up a flight of stairs. "The investor group's chat is melting down. I'm seeing screenshots everywhere. She's trying to spin it as a hack. She's saying you staged it, Cara." Of course she was. I squeezed the wheel tighter. "And you?" He hesitated. "I told them I saw the lab reports. I told them you didn't touch the money, that you didn't sign anything." Outside my window, the city blurred into gray shapes. For the first time, I let myself believe it. Derek was really with me. Maybe too late, but he was here now. "Stay visible," I told him. "She'll come after you next." A humorless laugh. "She already has." He hung up before I could ask what he meant. That night, Amanda posted a video, just like I knew she would. A close-up, soft lighting, her hair pulled back in that vulnerable girl-next-door bun she saved for damage control. Her voice trembled as she spoke about Betrayal hackers, a malicious smear campaign launched by someone who has struggled with mental health for years. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. My phone buzzed with old friends, people from high school I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Some messages dripped with pity, others with thinly veiled doubt. "Are you okay? Is it true? Why would you do this to her?" For a few hours, her mask held. Her army of devotees flooded the comments, demanding my head on a digital spike. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't made me feel sick. Then Peter leaked his piece. I don't know if he meant to, or if some small, exhausted part of him just wanted the truth out once and for all. An anonymous tip landed with a beauty blogger known for gleefully tearing down clean girl scams. Screenshots of the real lab results, ingredient swaps, inflated labels, products that claimed to be vegan but tested positive for animal byproducts. Tiny, damning details Amanda's loyal fans couldn't spin away. By morning, the comments under her video turned. Slowly at first, a few cracks in the dam. Wait, what about the lab test? Is this why my serum made me break out? Did you know about this, Amanda? And under all that noise, her empire shifted on its rotten foundation. I pictured her packing her pristine condo, phone to her ear, barking at her lawyer to bury us. But money couldn't plug every hole anymore, not when the leaks were coming from inside her walls. I didn't sleep again that night, but I didn't hide either. I sat at my kitchen table, Clara's notebook open beside me, Peter's reports spread out like a map of everything Amanda had stolen. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like prey waiting for teeth. I felt like the teeth. By the time the sun cracked through the grimy blinds of my apartment, Amanda's statement video had racked up over 1 million views. The likes and shares didn't tell the whole story, though buried in that flood of hearts and pity comments were the barbed questions that slipped through her carefully built facade like knives through silk. I sat on the floor by my coffee table, half-eaten toast on a plate I'd stopped pretending to care about. My laptop was open, Clara's notebook beside it, my phone buzzing with notifications every few seconds. At some point, the noise blurred into static, just more voices trying to pull the story one way or the other. Amanda's fans called me bitter, unstable, jealous. Old classmates from high school slid into my DMs to say they always knew something was off about her. Strangers who'd once worshipped her morning routine were now dissecting every photo, every sponsored ad, every soft focus video for clues they'd missed. The mob never stayed loyal. Amanda should have known that. She taught me better than anyone. When people realize their golden idol has clay feet, they don't just look away, they grab hammers. I heard from Derek again around noon. He didn't bother with a call this time, just a string of voice messages, each one more frantic than the last. She's threatening to freeze my shares, Kara. She's saying I violated an NDA I never even signed. Her lawyer been emailing me all morning. She's desperate, she knows it's slipping. I can't cover you anymore. She'll come for your apartment, for your name. She'll tell the board you're unstable. You've always been unstable. She'll bury you if you're not ready. He didn't say sorry this time. He didn't have to. His fear was apology enough. I closed his messages without replying. There was nothing left to say. Derek had done enough, or maybe just enough to save himself. Either way, I didn't blame him. He was a man who'd always chosen the strongest shield in the room. For once, that wasn't Amanda. By sunset, the big influencers started to peel away. One by one, the pretty girls in Amanda's reels, the ones she flew to Malibu retreats, bribed with swag bags and whispered promises, began posting their disclaimers. I never knew about the ingredients. I was as shocked as you are. We're cutting ties until further notice. Each statement was carefully worded, wrapped in the same PR spin Clara used to craft for Amanda when they were still friends. But I could see the cracks. Clara knew where to poke, which emails to forward, which threads to pull, and Peter's lab reports did the rest. I should have felt triumphant watching Amanda's followers dwindle. But triumph is a hard thing to hold when you know it comes at the cost of 1,000 people's illusions, the same illusions you once helped prop up by staying quiet. I found myself back at Dad's grave that evening. I don't know what I thought I'd find there, some ghost of his voice maybe, some approval in the wind that cut through the thin trees above the family plot. The cemetery was empty except for a groundskeeper dragging a rake over brittle winter grass. I crouched by the headstone, tracing the carved letters with a fingertip numb from the cold. James Winslow. Beloved father, loyal husband. Amanda hadn't bothered with a bigger stone, too morbid, she said at the time, too bleak for the brand. We could have afforded marble, but she chose granite because it photographed better on the day she gave her weepy statement to the local news. I pressed my palm flat against the rough stone and whispered, "I'm fixing it, Dad, I promise." I didn't hear an answer, but when I stood up, the wind felt different, colder, sharper, like a warning or a blessing. When I got back to my apartment, Clara was waiting for me in the hallway. She looked worse than I'd ever seen her, dark circles, hair unwashed, an oversized coat that made her look half her size. She didn't bother with hello. She shoved a manila envelope into my hands, her voice low and breathless. She's trying to sell. My heart lurched. What? Winslow Glow? She's lining up a buyout deal with a bigger conglomerate. They'll swallow the brand, bury the controversy. She'll walk away with enough to start over, change her name, do it all again. I stared at the envelope. Inside were screenshots, emails between Amanda and some faceless executive from a mega beauty corporation that owned half the shelves at Sephora. The offer was real and huge. She's going to spin it like she's stepping back to focus on her mental health, Clara spat. She'll rebrand herself as a wellness coach and empowerment guru. She'll pivot. She always does. I sank onto the hallway floor, the envelope sliding off my lap onto the carpet. My pulse roared in my ears. Amanda wasn't just going to slip away, she was going to win. Again. Clara crouched in front of me, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion. You have to block it. If she cashes out now, she leaves us holding the bag. The debts, the fines, the lawsuits. She disappears to Bali or Marrakesh or wherever she thinks she can start over, and we're the ones left to rot. I closed my eyes, my father's grave flashed behind my eyelids. The granite I'd traced with my thumb hours earlier, the promise I'd whispered. No, I breathed, she doesn't get to run. Clara grabbed my shoulder. Then what do we do, Kara, because she's fast and we're almost out of time. I looked down at the envelope. At the corporate letterhead, the NDA draft with Amanda's neat digital signature. The last mask she'd wear before she vanished behind another perfectly curated lie. And for the first time in days, a plan burned through my mind, not scribbled on sticky notes, not whispered at backroom dinners, but clear and cold as ice. We cut her off at the knees, I said. I stayed up all night again, this time not packing, not worrying, but working. Peter sent me the final batch of lab documents, every failed test, every manipulated batch, every violation buried in fine print. Clara pulled old contracts from the archives, influencer agreements, investor memos, hush money settlements Amanda had buried under layers of shell companies. Derek, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of fear, slipped me internal board memos he'd stashed away when he still thought Amanda might keep him safe. Emails about hush money, NDA threats, brand partners who'd pulled out quietly to avoid lawsuits. By dawn, my floor was covered in paper, and at the center of it all was my laptop, open to an anonymous tip line for the State Consumer Protection Board, the one department big enough and messy enough to crush Amanda's buyout before it closed. I typed until my fingers ached. Facts, attachments, timelines, a letter from Kara Winslow, the silent sister, the naive trust fund kid, the girl who used to braid Amanda's hair and believe every promise she made. When I hit send, the sun was creeping over the city skyline, soft gold against the gray towers. I whispered to myself, this is for Dad and for me. Amanda always thought her secrets were her armor. She forgot secrets leak, especially when they're carried by people with nothing left to lose. It took exactly 48 hours for the State Consumer Protection Board to reply. The email was polite, almost clinical, but I could read the weight behind every line. This is serious. This is big. We're launching an immediate investigation. Clara was with me when I opened it, sprawled across my couch with her knees hugged to her chest, her phone forgot on the armrest beside her. She'd been running on caffeine and fear for so long that when she read the email over my shoulder, her shoulders just sagged. Not in relief, not yet, but in that bone-deep exhaustion that comes when the adrenaline drain finally catches up. Do you think it'll stop her? She asked, her voice hoarse from a week of whispered meetings and sleepless nights. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reread the email, the parts about pending interviews, the legal holds they were placing on Winslow Glow's assets, the polite request for all the documentation I could provide. A tiny piece of me wanted to believe this was the moment the story ended. That Amanda would read those cold lines, see her buyout slipping like sand through her manicured fingers and just give up. But I knew better. Amanda Winslow didn't give up. She pivoted. She spun. She found another mask to wear until you forgot the cracks in the last one. I sat down on the floor next to Clara, our backs against the coffee table, buried in empty mugs and scattered receipts. It won't stop her, I murmured, but it'll slow her down, and maybe that's enough. The knock came later that night. Not a polite tap, but the heavy, deliberate pound of someone who wanted me to feel it in my bones. Clara shot up like a startled cat, her eyes wide. I motioned for her to stay put, then crossed the creaking floorboards to the door. Through the peephole, Amanda, alone. She wasn't dressed for the cameras this time, no soft cashmere, no curated, effortless glow. She wore an old hoodie that might have been mine once, her hair scraped back in a limp ponytail that made her look younger, smaller. But her eyes, those were the same. Hard, wet with fury she hadn't bothered to hide. I cracked the door just enough that the chain caught the frame. What do you want? She leaned in, voice low enough that Clara wouldn't hear from the couch. Open the door, Cara. I shook my head, no. For a heartbeat, I saw something flicker across her face, disbelief maybe, or hurt. The same look she gave me at Dad's funeral when I refused to stand by her side for the press photos. You think you've won, she hissed. No, I said softly, not yet. She pressed her palm flat against the doorframe, the chipped paint catching on her perfect nails. I built this. You think you can take it because you ran crying to the state? Because you tattled like some spoiled child? You're going to ruin everything. I'm fixing it, I shot back. I'm fixing what you broke. Her laugh was sharp and wrong, the kind of sound that made the hairs on my arms prickle. You think they'll let you? You think those investors care about your sad little sob story? They'll eat you alive, Cara, just like they were always going to eat me alive. I was trying to protect you. I flinched at that, her favorite lie, protect you, as if forging my name, draining my trust, trapping me in her web was some kind of mercy. Go home, Amanda, I said, my voice shaking for the first time in days. Take what's left of your pretty lies and go. The state's going to freeze the accounts. The buyout's dead, it's over. For a heartbeat, she just stood there, the fight flickering behind her eyes like a dying bulb. Then her mask slipped back into place. Cold, calm, beautiful in its cruelty. You think you know me, Cara, she said. But you don't. I will always land on my feet. And you, she leaned closer, her breath fogging the peephole glass, you'll always be the girl I taught to kneel. I didn't let her see me flinch this time. I closed the door, locked it, slid down the wood until I was sitting on the dusty floor, my breath echoing in the quiet. Clara appeared beside me a minute later. She didn't ask what Amanda said, she didn't have to. By morning, the story hit the news, not just the gossip blogs or beauty TikTok, but real news. A local station ran a segment about Winslow Glow's secret scandal, complete with screenshots they'd pulled from the Consumer Board's public statement. The headline was gentle, influencer empire under investigation, but the subtext was a kill shot. I watched Amanda's last video on mute, the corners of her mouth twitching around careful, desperate sentences about mistakes and misunderstandings and miscommunication. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, not because she was any less beautiful, but because the weight of her own illusions was finally crushing her from the inside. I expected her to run. Instead, she showed up at my door again, this time in daylight. No mask, no charm, just Amanda, raw, ragged, eyes ringed with sleeplessness. I'm not here to beg, she said before I could speak. Good, I said. She stepped inside uninvited, moving past me like she owned the air between us. She stood in my living room, taking in the clutter, Clara's coffee mugs, Peter's folders, my dad's old blanket crumpled in a corner. Her eyes landed on the envelope from the Consumer Board still half open on the table. Is this what you wanted? She asked, her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't answer. She turned to me, suddenly desperate. Cara, listen to me. No. I stepped forward, my throat tight but my spine steady. No more listening. No more pretending we're sisters first and victims second. You did this. You broke it. And you don't get to stand in my living room and rewrite the ending just because you're scared. Her mouth opened, some last gasp of spin and sugar and tears, but I didn't give her the space to use it. I'm taking it, I said. I'm taking the company, I'm fixing what I can. And you're going to sign it over, Amanda, or the state will do it for you. Her laugh was wet, bitter, and what happens to me, they'll bury me. I swallowed the part of me that almost pitied her. The part that saw the big sister who used to braid my hair and promise me the monsters weren't real, because the monster was always her. That's not my problem anymore, I said. Amanda's eyes burned into mine, bright with a fury that would have broken me a year ago. She stepped so close I could see the tiny cracks in her foundation, the way her lip trembled despite how hard she pressed it shut. You think you're strong enough for this, she spat. You think you can wear my crown, you'll drown in it, Cora. I didn't look away, then I'll drown standing. She left without another word, the door slamming so hard the picture frames on my hallway wall rattled. I watched her stride down the street from my window. Even beaten, even cornered, Amanda Winslow moved like the world owed her its spotlight. Maybe it always would. But for the first time, she didn't own me. Late that night, Clara curled up on my couch, her eyes half closed but her laptop open, emails streaming in from terrified partners and board members scrambling to jump ship before Amanda's name poisoned them too. Do you think she'll really sign? Clara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. I looked at the blank contract on my table, the one Derek's lawyer friend drafted in exchange for immunity. She will, I said, because if she doesn't, there'll be nothing left to sign over. Outside, the city thrummed, a heartbeat I could finally feel in my chest instead of under someone else's heel. It was mine now, the storm, the mess, the empire built on stolen trust and pretty lies. And tomorrow I'd stand in its ashes, not Amanda's shadow. The morning she signed, the sky over the city cracked open with rain, not the polite drizzle that misted glass towers for Instagram backdrops, but a cold, punishing downpour that battered my window so hard it rattled the frame. Clara was sprawled across my couch, phone dead in her hand, her hair a tangled halo against the pillow she'd stolen from my bed sometime after 3 a.m. I was awake before dawn because sleep had become impossible, my mind a hive of worry and ugly hope. The blank contract sat on my kitchen table next to a half-eaten piece of toast and an untouched cup of coffee, both stale by the time the door buzzer startled me out of my restless trance. It was Amanda herself who came first, of course it was. It was her lawyer, a sharp-jawed man in a rain-drenched coat whose smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Winslow, he said, voice polite enough to be an insult. She's waiting in the car, may we come in? I thought about saying no, about slamming the door in his face and letting the city drown her out there alone. But instead, I stepped aside and waved him in. Clara stirred on the couch, pushing herself upright and wiping the sleep from her eyes. She didn't ask, she could read it on my face. Amanda sat in the back seat of a black town car parked crooked outside my building, the rain streaking down the tinted windows like tears. She didn't look up when the driver opened the door for me, just stared straight ahead at the dashboard, her hands folded tight in her lap like she was bracing for an impact that never came. I slid in beside her, no words, not yet. The lawyer pressed a thick envelope into my hands, the contract, the signed addendum, the statement she'd prepared for her last loyal fans if any were still clinging on. I read it twice, my breath fogging the window. Amanda didn't move, didn't even shift her eyes to see if I'd flinch or beg or say thank you. Maybe she knew better than to hope for that now. The lawyer cleared his throat when the silence stretched too long. Miss Winslow. I'm reading, I snapped. He flinched, but Amanda didn't. When I got to the last page, her signature, perfect and flowing despite the rain and the ruin, I let the paper fall against my knee. My chest felt too small for my lungs. You're out, I said to her. My voice sounded foreign in the hush of the idling car. You don't get to call yourself Winslow Glow anymore. You don't get to sell what you broke. Amanda finally turned, just enough that I could see her reflection in the smeared glass. The same eyes we shared, my father's eyes, my mother's stubborn mouth. For a heartbeat I almost reached for her hand, the same hand that used to hold mine in grocery store aisles when I was too shy to ask for candy. But the memory was a ghost, it died before my fingers twitched. I hope you're ready, she whispered. Her voice was raw, not from tears, Amanda didn't cry, but from whatever monster she'd fed too long inside herself. Because you're the villain now, when they come for you, and they will, don't look for me. I almost laughed, as if I ever would. I slipped the contract back in the envelope, pressed it into the lawyer's chest, and leaned closer so she'd hear me over the rain drumming the roof. I'd rather be the villain than your victim, I said. Then I climbed out into the downpour, the city swallowing me whole while Amanda stayed caged in the car behind me, alone with her kingdom of ash and perfectly curated lies. Back upstairs, Clara was waiting by the window, her phone plugged in now, green battery icon flickering like a heartbeat. When she saw the envelope in my hands, her shoulders dropped. Not in relief, not yet, but in something that looked dangerously close to grief. "Did she do it?" she asked. I didn't answer, just held up the contract so she could see the neat rows of legal print, the final signature that turned my sister's empire into my responsibility. She sank back onto the couch, her eyes squeezed shut. "It's yours now." I sat beside her, the leather cushions squeaking under our weight. "Ours," I said quietly. "You, me, Peter, Derek, if he doesn't run off to hedge his bets somewhere else." Clara barked a tired laugh that caught in her throat like a sob. "You really think we can fix it? The fines, the refunds, the people she lied to." I didn't know, I still don't, even now. But what I did know was that leaving the ruins for someone else to sift through was exactly what Amanda counted on. She taught me to kneel, but she also taught me what happens when someone's smart enough to stand. "I think we can try," I said. Clara looked at me, really looked at me. Then she nodded, slow and heavy, like every bone in her body ached from carrying secrets for too long. I spent the next week doing nothing but signing papers. Meetings with exhausted lawyers who didn't trust me yet, but liked me better than Amanda's fake tears. Calls with investors who wanted to know if I was prepared to gut half the product line, to stand on a stage and admit the brand they worshipped was a fraud. Email threads with PR people who asked me how much dirt I was willing to drag into the light. All of it I told them. One night, I found myself back in my father's study, or what was left of it. The old house had been sold years ago to bankroll Amanda's expansion dreams, but the oak desk and battered filing cabinet still sat in the corner of my bedroom, repurposed as storage for bills and notebooks. I ran my fingers over the scratches Dad's watch had left on the wood when he'd grade papers late at night, back when the biggest scandal in our house was whether I'd sneak out to meet a boy behind the football field. He'd hate what I'd done, but maybe, just maybe, he'd forgive it too. It wasn't pretty. The day the news broke that Amanda Winslow had stepped down and handed the company to her wronged sister, the headlines spun it 1,000 ways. Some called me a hero, some called me opportunistic. A few still called me unstable, a convenient shield for people too ashamed to admit they'd been scammed. I didn't read the comments anymore. I didn't need to. The only voice I needed was my own, echoing back from the mirror every time I washed my face before bed. "You're not her." The first team meeting I held at the headquarters Amanda once built to look like a palace was small, barely 10 people. Clara sat at my side, a trembling cup of coffee clutched between her hands. Peter dialed in from his cramped lab, dark circles like bruises under his eyes. Derek lurked at the back of the room, eyes darting from me to his phone, as if Amanda's ghost might text him one last loophole. I stood at the head of the glass table, the same one Amanda used to perch on during photo shoots, all glossy hair and perfect posture. I didn't perch. I planted my feet, hands flat on the cool surface. "I'm not going to promise you a miracle," I said. My voice cracked a little, but I didn't stop. "I can't make this clean overnight. Some of you will probably lose money. Some of you will lose friends. But what I can promise is that the lies stop here. The fake labels, the ghost suppliers, the hush money, it's done." I took a breath. No one moved. Not Clara, not Peter, not Derek, not the handful of junior staff who'd survived Amanda's reign by looking the other way. "If you want to stay," I said, "stay because you believe we can make something honest out of the wreckage. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But if you stay, you answer to me, not to Amanda, not to a fake version of this brand, to me." It was quiet for a long time. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, the rain outside, the soft click of Peter's mic as he unmuted. "Okay," he said simply, "let's do it." We worked through the night, drafted letters to customers, apologizing and refunding and explaining every hidden lie we could pry loose. Scrapped the supplier deals that had been gutting the formulas from the inside. Called every influencer who hadn't already fled and offered them the truth in plain English. It wasn't enough. It never will be, not really, not for the people who trusted Amanda's perfect smile and ended up with burned skin or empty bank accounts or a betrayal they'd never see coming. but it was a start. When I finally stumbled home that weekend, hair greasy, eyes red from too many screens, I sat at my kitchen table again. The same table where I'd once cried over my empty trust account, wondering how my sister could love me so little that she'd take everything Dad left for me and turn it into a lie. Now the table was covered in paperwork, coffee rings, and a single line of text at the bottom of my to-do list. Winslow Glow under new management. And below that, in Clara's handwriting. Trust is earned, one bottle at a time. It wasn't a crown, not the kind Amanda wore anyway. It was heavier, sharper, and I'd carry it for as long as it took. I wish I could tell you there was some clean, perfect moment when it all felt worth it. That one day I woke up and the ghost of Amanda's betrayal had drifted off into the night, leaving me with a shiny new empire free of cracks. But I'd be lying. Some nights I still wake up in a cold sweat, her voice echoing at the edge of my dreams. You'll drown in it, Kara. Sometimes I see her in old photos people tag me in online, Amanda laughing on some sun-drenched terrace, glass of champagne in hand, all teeth and promise. I think about how easily I could have been right beside her in those shots if I'd just stayed quiet. If I'd let her keep braiding my hair and whispering that she knew best. But I didn't, and here I am, crown and ashes both. The first month was hell. After the news broke that Amanda had stepped down, the PR team's gentle word for forced out, the floodgates opened. Refund requests, lawsuits, threats. Angry emails from customers who trusted our labels to be clean, honest, safe. DMs from women who told me they built their self-worth around Amanda's miracle serums, only to end up with rashes, empty wallets, and shame. Clara and I worked from my apartment most nights because stepping into the old HQ felt like walking through a haunted house. Amanda's framed photos still line the lobby walls, her perfect smile frozen forever above the reception desk she never actually sat behind. I told the cleaning crew to take them down. They asked if I wanted them boxed up or shredded. I told them to burn every last one. They didn't, of course, probably toss them in a dumpster behind the loading dock. That's fine. Ashes are ashes, no matter how they scatter. Peter came back, properly this time. He moved his lab equipment into a tiny rented space we could barely afford, and we sat cross-legged on the concrete floor reading ingredient lists like they were sacred texts. Half the old products were scrapped outright, too contaminated, too cheaply sourced, too riddled with shady paperwork to risk keeping. The lawyers said I was out of my mind, that I should have just sold the brand's name to the highest bidder, taken the payout and run. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. Because as much as Amanda had twisted Winslow Glow into a lie, it had started with my father's money, my name, my family's bones buried under the marble floor of her mansion. I wasn't going to hand that over to someone else who'd whitewash the history and pretend the rot never existed. If I was going to gut it, I was going to gut it myself. A month in, the board, what was left of it, came for me. We met in a cold, echoing conference room that smelled like stale coffee and panic. Derek was there, pretending to look supportive while his eyes flicked to the exits every time I said something that made the old men uncomfortable. You're burning it down, Kara, one of them said, a man who'd smiled at Amanda's ribbon cuttings while cashing bonus checks she forged in my name. I didn't flinch. It's already burned, I said. I'm just clearing the ashes. He leaned back, folding his arms over his gut like a judge waiting for a confession. And what do you think happens when you can't rebuild it? When you run out of pity points and no one wants your story anymore? Clara shifted beside me, her knee bumping mine under the table. She looked ready to snap a pen in half and stab him with it. I squeezed her hand instead. I don't care if they want my story, I told him. I care if they want my products, and if they don't, fine, at least it's honest failure. I can live with that. He laughed, a sound like rust scraping glass. You think honesty sells, Cora? I thought about my father's study, about the papers he'd sign with a cheap ballpoint pen, the way he'd look me in the eye when he said, always tell the truth, kid, especially when it hurts. It will, I said, because it has to. They didn't fire me, maybe they couldn't. Or maybe they were too afraid of how deep my story had sunk its claws into the media. For once, my name, Kara Winslow, meant something Amanda couldn't spin. The first relaunch was small, laughably small compared to the flashy influencer parties Amanda used to throw. No rooftop DJ. No hired models sipping fake cocktails by the pool. Just Clara and Peter and me, and a pop-up booth at a tiny indie beauty expo downtown. We didn't even sell anything. We gave it away, tiny vials, hand-labeled, with ingredient lists twice as long as they needed to be. Clara stood behind the folding table explaining every word to curious shoppers. Peter hovered near the samples, beaming like a proud dad every time someone asked about the new lab. I watched it all from the corner, my name on the little sign behind Clara's shoulder, my father's money finally doing what it was meant to do. No more lies, no more borrowed gloss. Someone asked me if I was Amanda's sister. I smiled an honest, tired, raw smile. I used to be, I said, now I'm just me. It was never about the money. Not really. The trust fund she gutted was gone forever, spent on marble countertops, fake wellness retreats, hush money for influencers too scared to break rank. I'd never see that money again. But standing in that cramped booth, watching Clara hand out tiny bottles and Peter scribble formula tweaks in a battered notebook, I realized I'd gotten something better. My name, my father's promise. A clean break from the lie that Winslow Glow had to mean Amanda Winslow. The final time I saw Amanda wasn't dramatic. No big confrontation, no apology that would never come. She didn't show up at my door again. Instead, I got a single, scrawled note slipped under my office door weeks later. No envelope, just her handwriting, unmistakable even in its mess. Good luck living in my shadow. I didn't keep it, didn't show Clara, just tore it up one piece at a time and dropped the scraps in my cold coffee. Amanda was gone. Whatever mask she'd slip on next, it wouldn't be my problem. She'd have to build her kingdom somewhere else, and for the first time in my life, I wouldn't be the foundation she buried it in. 6 months later, we rebranded. We didn't keep the old name. Winslow Glow deserved to die with her spin. We named it Kara & Co. Not flashy, not perfect, just honest. I put my own signature on every label not because I wanted to be worshipped, but because I wanted every bottle to remind me what it cost to get here. Some people still hate me. Some people still think I'm Amanda in a different dress. Maybe that'll never change. But these days, when I stand in my tiny lab with Clara fussing over packaging and Peter grumbling about supplier delays, I don't care if they believe my story. I know it's true. I'm Kara Winslow, 31 years old. I own my sister's company now, but it's not hers anymore. It's mine. And I didn't drown, I learned to swim in the wreckage.